If Mr. Paul wants to be taken seriously, he needs to do more than pull political stunts that fire up impressionable libertarian kids in their college dorms. He needs to know what he's talking about.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. John McCain says, well, these are political stunts. You got to do a little bit more than fire up some kids in college dorm rooms. Well, Barack Obama did pretty well by firing up kids in college dorm rooms. He did pretty well by appealing to new voters who were kind of tuned out to politics, and Barack Obama comes along and razzle-dazzles them. Goes up on stage, puts on a good show, starts talking like he understands the kids, and lo and behold, what was once there's a solid young voters' connection to the Republican Party was gone. Well, Rand Paul does his own thing now. Rand Paul decides, look, principle still matters in this country. Constitution still matters. He gets up and he does it his way. And for that, John McCain is criticizing him? Don't you think the Republican Party needs young voters? Don't you think the Republican Party actually needs to expand? And from what I'm reading today, we have liberals who are giving him some kudos for what he did. Liberals should proudly cheer on Rand Paul. And from the blogosphere, we're seeing, principled liberals saying that any Democrat who didn't stand with him are embarrassingly hypocritical. Many of the same Democratic partisans have argued that President Obama has an obligation to try to work with big bad Republicans on ending the sequester and enacting Simpson-Bowles-style cuts. But it's fine to sit and complain about the Republican Party or with George Bush's renditions or Gitmo, but when a Republican stands up and says, this isn't good that we're doing this, we don't have all the Democrats supporting him. That's complete bunk. And good for the principled liberals to be calling out their fellow Democrats. I would say, by the way, that we didn't have enough principled Republicans disagreeing with George Bush in the Bush second term. They were all afraid of Bush. They were afraid to criticize Bush, and a lot of folks on cable TV were afraid to criticize Bush. They just didn't want to do it. Well, that was something that ended up really hurting the Republican Party because the country had left the Bush war drums deal behind. And yet Republicans were still saying Bush, 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 Bush. Well, do you think the answer is to go back to those policies, the policies of 2004 to 2008? I think Rand Paul, during his filibuster, said no. No. We can't do that. We can't be on this. We can't justify doing anything by saying we're at a perpetual state of war. Joining us now, Senator Rand Paul. Senator, I'm just glad you finally have gone to the bathroom.
Well, I found that it is difficult to stand still for 13 hours.
No, so you were dehydrated. Did you sneak anything to eat? You can tell us now. Did you sneak a power bar or anything?
Yeah, I was sneaking some candy bars, and I can tell you that Marco Rubio came in. He gave me some advice on drinking water,
yeah.
But it was sort of bad advice. Drinking water was probably a mistake for me.
Yeah, I mean, we were all depressed. I mean, I was in my room. My kids are like, "Why is the television still on?" I mean, I couldn't even find C-SPAN 2. It took me an hour to find it on FiOS. Finally found it. I said, "Now, great, he's giving up now, 12:40." I mean, come on, you couldn't beat Strom Thurmond, okay? You had to go to the bathroom. I mean, Senator, come on. Look,
yeah, I think Strom Thurmond was cheating and going to the cloakroom, though.
Something was happening with Strom Thurmond. Let's talk about what's happened since the filibuster. I think you know by now that More people are starting to think about the Constitution just because you took this principled stand, and they're starting to think about due process and giving the executive branch this unbridled authority because we're always at a state of war in this new big bad world of ours. And so then Lindsey Graham and John McCain come out yesterday, and they call you ridiculous. You and Ted Cruz are wacko birds, according to John McCain. And they basically, delivered a lot of snark about what they thought was your political stunt.
Well, I think they're on the wrong side of history. I think it is important to know that no politician rises above the Constitution. It's important to debate where war is and where war isn't. And I understand that the rules are different in war. For example, I'm not asking our soldiers to get Miranda rights. I'm not asking our soldiers to give jury trials to the people shooting at them. But I am asking that in America, if your government wants to accuse you of being an enemy combatant, that you really do deserve a lawyer and you do get a trial. You get a trial of your peers, and it's not enough for someone just to say you are associated with terrorism. You really have to have the protections of the law. In fact, when I talk to my young soldiers that go from Fort Campbell and Fort Knox over there, that's what they believe they're fighting for, is the Bill of Rights, and I'm with them. That's what we are fighting for.
Senator McCain was reading from the Wall Street Journal yesterday, which attacked you as well. If you want to be taken seriously, you need to do more than pull political stunts that fire up impressionable libertarian kids in their dorm rooms. That was a slam at your dad as well, I believe.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it is that they sort of miss, and I wish they would try to have a more highbrow debate about this, is that they say, well, enemy combatants can be targeted. Basically, the Wall Street Journal says that if you are an enemy combatant, which means you could be an American in a cafe eating somewhere in America, you can be targeted by a drone strike. And this is not what America represents. And the problem is who gets to determine who's an enemy combatant. The thing is you can conceive of, let's say you're an Arab American in this country and you have relatives in Lebanon and you email them. What if it turns out that one of those people is being investigated and now they say you have an association with terrorism? Would you not get your day in court to say, well, it just happens to be my cousin and I'm not really a terrorist, and get to prove your innocence, and the government would try to prove your guilt? I would think that would be the very least we would expect in our system. And the president, I think, finally came to understand this, and we ask a very pointed question. Can you target an American and put them on a kill list in America if they're in a non-combatant role, if they don't have a weapon? Now, if they do have a weapon, I think we all agree. If you're attacking the Twin Towers with planes, whether you're an American or not, if you're attacking the Capitol with a grenade launcher, lethal force can be used at you with no due process. When you're committing lethal force, it can be. My concern has always been if you're accused of being associated, because we had these fusion centers in Missouri a couple of years ago where they put out a document saying, beware of people who are pro-life. They might be terrorists. Beware of people who believe in a strong border security. They might be terrorists. Beware of people who vote for the Constitution Party or the Libertarian Party. They actually put this in writing that these people are potential terrorists. And if that's the list, certainly you would think for political expression you would get your day in court before you're labeled an enemy combatant.
But is this not a problem with, look, and I think this conversation needs to be had before the next presidential election. The neoconservative view of the use of U.S. force has clearly hurt the Republican Party. Over the last 4 years, we've seen the American people, 6 years, I would say, the American people turn against what happened in Iraq and, in part, the long war in Afghanistan. And we didn't have enough Republicans questioning George W. Bush in 2007 and 2008. And now you're basically advancing that conversation now about what conservatism is.
Well, I think they're important constitutional debates, and I think that's the main objection I have to some of these Republicans who are dismissive and call it frivolous, is that, you can have a different opinion. I'm not saying I'm always right, but a discussion over the Bill of Rights and the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment, when it applies and to whom it applies, and whether politicians get to decide when the Constitution applies. I think it's a very important debate. And so I'm glad we had the debate. I'm kind of glad I can sit down now. But
Senator, they decided not to go to the Senate floor. There was 13 hours where either McCain or Graham could have debated you on the floor. Why do you think they didn't?
Well, we've had this debate one time. Last year, Senator McCain and I had an exchange on the floor, and we rarely have much debate in the Senate, but this was a good exchange, and I asked him, this was the debate over indefinite detention, and I asked him, well, if this passes, could you detain an American, send them to Guantanamo Bay without a jury trial? And he said yes. He said, basically, if they're declared to be a safety risk for the U.S., we could do this. But it begs the question, who gets to determine whether you're a safety risk or whether you're an enemy combatant? But most Americans don't understand it that way. We don't think that you could be accused by a politician. And that's why I tried to make this not about President Obama, because I'm worried about any politician deciding my innocence or guilt without getting a trial.
No, well, it's just, again, the perpetual war machine. You were in the elevator briefly with John McCain. You sound like you're in a wind tunnel, Senator. I don't know where you are, but you sound like you're in you sound like you're in Kazakhstan or something. But what happened? It's top secret. I would like to tell you, but I can't tell you because I'm worried about my whether I'll be labeled as an enemy combatant. Oh, that's right. Look up. What's that whirring sound you hear above you? Senator, so you were in the elevator briefly with Senator McCain. Any conversation you'd like to tell us about that you had with him? Well, we get along on a personal basis. I like John McCain. I appreciate him as a war hero. I've told him that publicly, and I mean that sincerely. This is a man who fought for his country, was held in a prison for, I believe, 6 or 7 years, and so I have a great deal of respect for that, but it doesn't mean we still can't have a debate and that other people can't have opinions. But I do have respect for him as a war hero and appreciate his service to the country. We all do, but that's a given. That's a given. You see, now I know you're running for president because I gave you at least 5 opportunities to take shots at McCain and Graham, and you didn't take the bait on any of those questions. So, Paul. And well, the same goes for our political opponents, because I really, with the president, tried to make this, I don't agree with him on much, but really try to make this about presidential power versus legislative power, checks and balances. And to tell you the truth, one of the best compliments I got from doing this is 5 or 6 Democrat senators came up afterwards, and even Senator Reid publicly said that it wasn't a frivolous question. It was an important question, and many of them privately came up and said, you're right, and I really think Barack Obama, had he been senator still, would have been like Senator Wyden and interested in civil liberties. The only mistake you made, don't you love people criticizing you after 13 hours? The only mistake you made, Senator, was when Durbin gets up and starts doing this whole 9/11 deal, and you said, touche. And I'm like, touche? He's making a completely irrelevant point. And then Cruz gets up, and he and I both clerked on the Supreme Court. Cruz gets up and just dismantles Durbin's point. But you were tired. You were really tired at that point. But I'm more than happy to take help from Mike Lee and Ted Cruz, who both clerked on the Supreme Court and are brilliant attorneys. But I also did argue the point that it is different for bin Laden because, one, he wasn't an American citizen. Right. He wasn't here. Right. And Ted Cruz also made the point that even bin Laden here, we would have gone in and captured him in a different way. We wouldn't send a drone strike in America. But it is different, and I think that's what's important about the debate and what makes it not frivolous is we're not talking about that the rules are exactly the same overseas as here. All right. But we are saying that the rules overseas and the rules in a war are not going to be the same on the American homeland. And this is the point that Senator Graham makes, I think incorrectly, is he says over and over again, America is the battlefield. You don't get an attorney here. You don't get a trial here if we say you're a terrorist. Yep. But it begs the question, who gets to determine that? Well, the perpetual war drums. It's hurt the Republican Party, undoubtedly. No doubt about it. Rand Paul, it's great to talk to you. Get some rest, and we'll talk to you real soon. And the Paul Cruz 2016 bumper stickers are already being printed, which I love. Senator, thanks so much. Thanks a lot, Laura. All right, we'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. Michelle Obama and John Kerry.